We made an executive decision this morning. We are jumping to the Gospel of John. So, let us listen for what the Spirit is saying to us in this reading. Thank you. That's Eric's leftover. But I appreciate it. I may have needed it in the next breath. We're reading from John 20, 19 through 23. I also truncated this because it's too much wealth. We can only concentrate on one at a time. When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw Jesus, who said to them, "Again, peace be with you. As God has sent me, so I send you." When he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." May God add blessing to this reading of the Word. Have you ever had the breath knocked out of you? I mean, not metaphorically. We've all done that. But I mean literally. If you did, you'd never forget it. When I was a teenager, my young cousin Carl was visiting us. And I was lying on the floor on my stomach, reading a book, of course, when he snuck up and jumped on my back. It forced all the air out of my lungs, and I lay gasping for air, unable to breathe, and terrified. I thought I was dead. It makes you realize how important breath is. It is life. When we talk about dying, we often say they breathed their last. So be aware of breath this week. But here comes Jesus this morning in John's Gospel to minister to the heartbroken disciples who have had the breath knocked out of them by their leader's brutal death. Life does that sometimes. But Jesus breathes new life into them, easing their fears, bringing them hope and purpose. With Christ's death, they felt all was lost. Life was over, and they had known it. But no, this wonderful story, in this wonderful story, Jesus comes to those who loved him on the first day after Easter, coming through a locked door, no less, to get to his shocked, grieving, quaking disciples. It speaks so eloquently to us that nothing can overcome his love for his disciples. Not a locked door, not their inordinate fears, nothing. The unexpected, resurrected one comes to bring them his very life by sharing the very basis of his life with them, his breath. No waiting 50 days in John. Yes, they have been told that Christ lives, but there's nothing like seeing it for yourselves. And we see it through their story, their eyes, and with our own experience of presence. And what does he say after giving them this gift? Quit hiding out. Claim the life you've been offered. There are things to do, and they need getting on with doing them. By his presence, he gives them breathing space to heal, to think about how to carry on, to get their feet firmly planted in the reality that they are not alone, as they feared, that he has been with them and will not leave them. Their cramped spirits expand with each breath after that. Their hearts warm. As Bruce Eberly says, he now lives within them as their deepest reality, both at a spiritual and a cellular level. What's the deal with Jesus going through the locked door, okay? That really hangs people up. We all know people can't do that. So then the conversation veers off into all sorts of directions. Was it a ghost? Was this not a bodily resurrection? I want to say, stop, hold it. Don't look at this literally. Look deeper into the meaning beneath, because this is good news. With the risen Christ, there are no limitations of physical space. So Christ can be with each of us and all of us. The air we breathe is the gift of life from him. Just as God breathed life into humankind at the beginning of time, so Christ breathes new life into disciples wondering what Easter meant and what was next, and bringing them peace and an end to their fear that they couldn't do it without him. No, he has breathed his very life into them and into us. Now imagine this. We take about 25,000 breaths each day. If we visualize Christ breathing life into us with each breath that we take, it is equivalent to praying constantly, right? There is a fascinating book written by James Nestor in 2020 entitled Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art, named Best Book of the Year by NPR, if that makes any difference to you. It talks about how breathing correctly will improve our health, that we need to slow our breathing down and breathe deeply. This enables us to absorb more oxygen and lower our blood pressure and allow us a greater sense of peace. It reminded me of an exercise that Don Stevens taught me back in the 80s. Let's practice it for a minute. We're going to breathe in to the count of 8 and then out to the count of 8. Breathe into the count of 8 and out to the count of 16, into the count of 8 and out to the count of 24. I want everybody to put your feet firmly on the ground so you're grounded. Sit up straight so your lungs have room to breathe. And I'll do the counting for you so you can just concentrate on your breath. Ready? Breathe into the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Out to the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Into the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And out to the count of 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. No, I'm not trying to kill you. Into the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Out to the count of 24. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. And now take a deep breath. By the end of that exercise, you have breathed deeply and slowly and will feel less anxious, not more. After Don taught it to me, I offered it as an exercise to a woman who was going through a very difficult time in her marriage. She said it allowed her to sleep better at night and then cope better the next day. Try it. You might like it. Now imagine, as you do it, that Christ is breathing with you and in you, bringing you empowerment for each day. But this isn't just for individuals. It is meant for community as a whole. Christ didn't come to each disciple separately, but to the gathered group. Of course, minus Thomas, but remember the story of the valley of dried bones in Ezekiel? It was a great community of people who were double dead. But God tells them, I will cause breath to enter you, and you shall live. And they stood on their feet, a vast multitude, Ezekiel tells us. We hear these days, as the pandemic has knocked the breath out of us, that there continues a sense of depression, a lifelessness in the living of our days by a majority of people, 80% or something. We seem to be groping for direction, for hope, for connection with life. May we remember the valley of dried bones that was beyond hope, beyond life, and God raised up a whole people. If God's breath can raise up those stripped to the bone, God can certainly bring life to each of us and all of us. And makes this miraculous offer of newness each day. My friend Faye Oliver wrote a book called Christian Growth Through Meditation. One of the things about meditation is that in the silence, we slow down. We center ourselves in God so that the Spirit or breath of God can work in us to heal, transform. As Faye writes, many of us notice changes after we begin meditation. We feel more energetic, optimistic, alert. The Spirit breathing into us new life, even if we may not feel it. And it doesn't stop with human beings. On the 22nd of this month, the world will celebrate Earth Day. One of the suggested ways to celebrate this is to plant a tree. Trees may be the saving of our planet, for they take in the carbon dioxide that is a huge contributor to global warming and expels oxygen, which brings life. Our lives are inextricably linked to the life of our planet. Like the Celtic knot on the back of your bulletin, our lives are interwoven with God, one another, and our planet. What a great plan. When we deny that link, we do so at our peril. Christ has breathed life into us that we might bring life to all. This means being the hands and feet of Christ, bringing his empowerment, his compassion, his forgiveness. Wherever life and wholeness is planted, Christ is there in the midst of it. Gregory Boyle, one of the great saints of our day, in my estimation, is a Jesuit priest and winner of the California Peace Prize for his work in Los Angeles, setting up shop in the area of the highest concentration of murderous gang activity in the nation and bringing jobs and forgiveness and the compassion of God. He writes, "The highest form of sanctity is to live in hell and not lose hope." Boyle realizes that life has knocked the very air out of these gang members, but he's able to see the humanity of them and treats them as God's beloved. How do we bring hope to the outcasts of the world, which the world has filled with toxic shame? He suggests that it is the loving, forgiving person who is willing to pay attention, to listen, to care. It is the community of unconditional love, representing the, as he says, no matter whatness of God's love. Boyle believes that a spacious and undefended heart finds room for everything a person is and carves space for everybody else. Jesus gives us this gift when he breathes the Holy Spirit into us all. Thanks be to God.